Okay, I think this is gonna get. Good evening, all, and welcome to Liminal Muse. Thank you for joining me once again to read Pollyanna. If you'd like to support me and the channel, there's a link to buy me a coffee and check out my handcrafted items for sale or commission. You can also follow me on Blue Sky or join me in Discord. So let's take a moment, first of all, to settle into this place of imagination and dreams. Stories and dreams. Take a breath and ground yourself so that your imagination can soar. Pollyanna continues to touch the hearts and minds of her little town. She meets the local minister, a man overcome with the weight of the sins of his flock. Empathizing with him, she draws parallels from her own deceased father, who had felt the same burdens. She tells of how he drew comfort from the over 800 scriptures that said to rejoice and be glad. But even as the joy spreads from Pollyanna to the minister and to the whole town from there, an accident occurs. And suddenly, being glad isn't a game anymore. Chapter 24, John Pendleton. Pollyanna did not go to school tomorrow, nor the day after tomorrow. Pollyanna, however, did not realize this, except momentarily when a brief period of full consciousness set insistent questions to her lips. Pollyanna did not realize anything, in fact, very clearly, until a week had passed. Then the fever subsided, the pain lessened somewhat, and her mind awoke to full consciousness. She had then to be told all over again what had occurred. And so it's hurt that I am, and not sick, she sighed at last. Well, I'm glad of that. Glad? Pollyanna asked her aunt, who was sitting by the bed. Well, yes. I'd so much rather have broken legs like Mr. Pendleton's than lifelong invalids like Mrs. Snow, you know. Broken legs get well, and lifelong invalids don't. Miss Polly, who had said nothing whatever about broken legs, got suddenly to her feet and walked to the little dressing table across the room. She was picking up one object after another now, and putting each down in a nameless fashion quite unlike her usual decisiveness. Her face was not aimless looking at all, however. It was white and drawn. On the bed, Pollyanna lay blinking at the dancing band of colors on the ceiling, which came from one of the prisms in the window. I'm glad it isn't smallpox that ails me, too, she murmured contentedly. That would be worse than freckles. And I'm glad 'tisn't whooping cough. I've had that and it's horrid. And I'm glad 'tisn't appendicitis, nor measles, 'cause they're catching measles are, I mean, and they wouldn't let you stay here. You seem to be glad for a good many things, my dear, faltered Aunt Polly, putting her hand to her throat as if her collar bound. Pollyanna laughed softly. Well, I am. I've been thinking of 'em, lots of 'em. All the time I've been looking up at the rainbows. Oh, I love rainbows. I'm so glad Mr. Pendleton gave me those presents. I'm glad of some of the things I haven't said yet. I don't know, but I'm most glad I was hurt. Pollyanna! Pollyanna laughed softly again. She turned luminous eyes on her aunt. Well, you see, since I've been hurt, you've called me dear lots of times. And you didn't before. I'd love to be called dear. By the folks that belong to, I mean. Some of the ladies' aiders did call me that, and of course that was pretty nice, but not so nice as if they belonged to me like you do. Oh, Aunt Polly, I'm so glad you belong to me. Aunt Polly did not answer. Her hands were at her throat again. Her eyes were full of tears. She turned away and was hurrying from the room through the door by which the nurse had just entered. It was that afternoon that Nancy ran out to old Tom, who was cleaning harness in the barn. Her eyes were wild. Mr. Tom, guess what happened? She panted. You couldn't guess in 1,000 years. You couldn't. Now calculate, I won't try, retorted the man grimly. Especially as I ain't got more than 10 to live anyhow, probably. You better tell me first off, Nancy. Well, listen then. What are you supposed in the parlor now with the mistress? Who I say? Old Tom shook his head. There's no telling, he declared. Well, yes, there is. I'm telling. It's John Pendleton. Sho now, you joking, girl. Not much I am. I'm letting him myself, crutches and all. And the team he come in and just and waiting this minute at the door for him, just as if you wasn't the cranky old crosspatch he is. What never talks to no one. Just think, Mr. Tom, him calling on her. Well, why not? Demanded the old man a little aggressively. Nancy gave him a scornful glance. As if you didn't know better than me, she derided. Eh? Oh, you needn't be so innocent, she retorted with mock indignation. You would let me wild goose chasing in the first place. What do you mean? Nancy glanced through the open barn door towards the house and came a step nearer to the old man. Listen, 'twas you who's told me Miss Polly had a lover in the first place, wasn't it? Well, one day I thinks I found 2 and 2, and I put them together and makes 4. But it turns out to be 5. Ain't no 4 at all. With a gesture of indifference, old Tom turned and fell to work. If you're going to talk to me, you've got to talk plain horse sense, he declares testily. I never was no hand for figures. Nancy laughed. Well, this, she explained. Well, I heard something that made me think him and Miss Polly was lovers. Mr. Pendleton? Old Tom straightened up. Well, yes. Oh, I don't know he wasn't. It was that blessed child's mother he was in love with, and that's why he went over. Never mind that part, she added hastily, remembering just in time her promise to Pollyanna not to tell that Mr. Pendleton had wished her to come and live with him. Well, I've been asking folks about him some since, and I found out that him and Miss Polly ain't been friends for years, and that she's been hating him like peas and until the silly gossip about coupled their names together when she was 18 or 20. Well, yes, I remember, nodded old Tom. It was 3 or 4 years after Miss Jenny gave him a mitten and went off with the other chap. Miss Polly knew about it, of course, and was sorry for him. So she tried to be nice to him. Maybe she overdid it a little. She hated that minister chap, who had took off with her sister. At any rate, somebody began to make trouble. They said she was running after him. Running after any man? Her, interjected Nancy. Well, I know it, but they did, declared old Tom. And of course no gal with any spunk could stand that. Then about that time come her own lover and the trouble with him. After that she stopped with Oyster. Wouldn't have nothing to do with nobody for a spell. Her heart just seemed to turn bitter at the core. Well, yes, I know. I've heard about that now, rejoined Nancy. That's why you could have knocked me down with a feather when I see him at the door. Him? Well, she ain't spoke to for years. But I let him in and went and told her. What did she say? Old Tom held his breath suspended. Well, nothing at first. She was so still I thought she hadn't heard. I was just going to sit her over when she speaks up quiet like, tell Mr. Pendleton I will be down at once. And I come and told you. And I come out here and I told you, finished Nancy, cast another backward glance towards the house. Grunted Old Tom, and fell to work again. In the ceremonious parlor of the Harrington homestead, Mr. John Pendleton did not have to wait long before a swift step warned him of Miss Polly's coming. As he attempted to rise, she made a gesture of remonstrance. She did not offer her hand, however, and her face was coldly reserved. I called to ask for Pollyanna, he began at once, a little brusquely. Thank you. She is about the same, said Miss Polly. And that is... Won't you tell me how she is? His voice was not quite steady this time. A quick spasm of pain crossed the woman's face. I can't. I wish I could. You mean you don't know? Yes. But the Dr. Warren himself seems at sea. He is in correspondence now with a New York specialist. They have arranged for a consultation at once. But what were her injuries that you know? A slight cut on the head, 1 or 2 bruises, and an injury to the spine, which has seen cause paralysis from the hips down. A low cry came from the man. There was a brief silence. Then huskily he asked, And Pollyanna? Well, how does she take it? She doesn't understand at all how things really are, and I can't tell her. But she must know something. Miss Polly lifted her hand to her collar at her throat in the gesture that had become so common to her of late. Oh, yes. She knows she can't move, but she thinks her legs are broken. She says she's glad it's broken legs like yours rather than lifelong invalids like Mrs. Snow, because broken legs get well and the other doesn't. She talks like that all the time until it seems as if I should die. Through the blur of tears in his own eyes, the man saw the drawn face opposite, twisted with emotion. Involuntarily, his thoughts went back to what Pollyanna had said when he had made his final plea for her presence. Oh, I couldn't leave Aunt Polly now. It was this thought that made him ask, very gently, as soon as he could control his voice. I wonder if you know, Miss Harrington, how hard I tried to get Pollyanna to come and live with me. With you? Pollyanna? The man winced a little at the tone of her voice, but his own voice was still impersonally cool when he spoke again. Yes. I wanted to adopt her. Legally, you understand, making her my heir, of course. The woman in the opposite chair relaxed a little. It came to her suddenly what a brilliant future it would have meant for Pollyanna, this adoption, and she wondered if Pollyanna were old enough and mercenary enough to be tempted by this man's money and position. I am very fond of Pollyanna, the man was continuing. I am fond of her both for her own sake and for her mother's. I stood ready to give Pollyanna the love that had been 25 years in storage. Love? Miss Polly remembered suddenly why she had taken this child in the first place, and with the recollection that came the remembrance of Pollyanna's own words uttered that very morning, I love to be called by folks that belong to you. And it was this love hungry little girl that had been offered the stored-up affection of 25 years. And she was old enough to be tempted by love. With a sinking heart, Miss Polly realized that. With a sinking heart, too, she realized something else, the dreary of her own future now, without Pollyanna. Well, she said, and the man, recognizing the self-control that vibrated through the harshness of the tone, smiled sadly. She would not come, he answered. Why? She would not leave you. She said you had been so good to her. She wanted to stay with you. And she said she thought you wanted her to stay. He finished as he pulled himself to his feet. He did not look toward Miss Polly. He turned his face resolutely toward the door. But instantly he heard a swift step at his side and found a shaking hand thrust toward him. When the specialist comes, and I know anything definite about Pollyanna, I will let you hear it from me, said a trembling voice. Goodbye, and thank you for coming. Pollyanna will be pleased. Chapter 25. A Waiting Game. On the day after John Pendleton's call at the Harrington homestead, Miss Polly set herself to the task of preparing Pollyanna for the visit of the specialist. Pollyanna, my dear, she began gently, we have decided that we want another doctor besides Dr. Warren to see you. Another one might tell us something new to do, to help you get well faster, you know. A joyous light came to Pollyanna's face. Dr. Chilton? Oh, Aunt Polly, I'd so love to have Dr. Chilton. I've wanted him all this time, but I was afraid you didn't on account of his seeing you in the sun parlor that day, you know? So I didn't like to say anything. But I'm so glad you do want him. Aunt Polly's face had turned white, then red, then back to white again. But when she answered, she showed very plainly that she was trying to speak lightly and cheerfully. Oh, no, dear. It wasn't Dr. Chilton at all that I meant. It's a new doctor, a very famous doctor from New York, who knows a great deal about hurts like yours. Pollyanna's face fell. I don't believe he knows half as much as Dr. Chilton. Oh, yes, he does, I'm sure, dear. But it was Dr. Chilton who doctored Mr. Pendleton's broke leg, Aunt Polly. If you don't mind very much, I would like to have Dr. Chilton. Truly, I would. A distressed color suffused Miss Polly's face. For a moment she did not speak at all. Then she said gently, though yet with a touch of her old stern decisiveness, But I do mind, Pollyanna. I mind very much. I would do anything, almost anything for you, my dear. But for reasons which I do not care to speak of now, I don't wish Dr. Chilton called in on this case. And believe me, he can not know so much about your trouble as this great doctor does, who will come from New York tomorrow. Pollyanna still looked unconvinced. But Aunt Polly, if you love Dr. Chilton... What, Pollyanna? Aunt Polly's voice was very sharp now. Her cheeks were very red, too. Well, I said, if you love Dr. Chilton, you didn't love the other one, sighed Pollyanna. Seems to me that would make some difference in the good he would do. And I'd love to... The nurse entered that room at the moment, and Aunt Polly rose to her feet abruptly, a look of relief on her face. I am very sorry, Pollyanna, she said a little stiffly, but I am afraid that you'll have to let me be the judge this time. Besides, it's already arranged. The New York doctor is coming tomorrow. As it happened, however, the New York doctor did not come tomorrow. At the last moment, a telegram told of an unavoidable delay owing to the sudden illness of the specialist himself. This led Pollyanna into a renewed pleading for the substitution of Dr. Chilton, which would be so easy now, you know. But, as before, Aunt Polly shook her head and said, "No, dear," very decisively, yet with a still more anxious assurance that she would do anything, anything but that, to please her dear Pollyanna. As the days of waiting passed, one by one, it did indeed seem that Pollyanna was doing everything but that she could do to please her niece. "I wouldn't have believed it, you couldn't have made me believe it," Nancy said to old Tom one morning. "There don't seem to be a minute in the day that Miss Polly ain't just hanging around waiting to do some fat blessed lamb. If it ain't more'n to let the cat in. And her what wouldn't let Fluff nor Buff upstairs for love nor money a week ago, and now she lets 'em tumble all over the bed just 'cause it pleases Miss Pollyanna. And when she ain't doing nothing else, she's moving their little glass danglers round her different windows in the room so the sun will make rainbows dance, as that blessed child calls it. She sent Timothy down to Cobb's greenhouse 3 times for fresh flowers, and that beside all the other posies fetching her into her too. And the other day, if I didn't find her sitting for the bed with the nurse actually doing her hair, and Miss Pollyanna looking on and bossing from her head, her eyes all shining happy. And I declare to goodness, if Miss Polly ain't wearing her hair like that every day now, just to please that blessed child." Old Tom chuckles. "Well, it strikes me Miss Polly herself ain't looking none the worse for wearing them 'ere curls round her forehead," he observed dryly. "'Course she ain't," retorted Nancy indignantly. "She looks like folks now." "She's actually almost careful now, Nancy," interrupted the old man with a slow grin. "You know what you said when I told you she was handsome once." Nancy shrugged her shoulders. "Oh, she ain't handsome, of course. But I will hold up she don't look like the same woman, what with the ribbons and lace jiggers Miss Pollyanna makes her wear around her neck." "I told you so," nodded the man. "I told you she wasn't old." Nancy laughed. "Well, I'll odd up she hain't quite got so good an imitation of it as she did have before Miss Pollyanna come. Say, Mr. Tom, who was her lover? I haven't found that out yet. I ain't. Ain't you?" asked the old man with an odd look on his face. "Well, I guess you won't then. From me." "Oh, Mr. Tom, come on now," wheedled the girl. "You see, there ain't many folks here that I can ask." "Maybe not. Well, there's one anyhow that ain't answering," grinned old Tom. Then abruptly the light died from his eyes. "How's she today, the little girl?" Nancy shook her head. Her face, too, had sobered. "Just the same, Mr. Tom. There ain't no special difference as I can see, or anybody guess. She just lays there, and sleeps, and talks some, and tries to smile, and be glad, 'cause the sun sets or the moon rises or some other such thing, till it's enough to make your heart break with the aching." "I know. It's the game. Bless her sweetheart," nodded old Tom, blinking a little. "She told you then, too, about that of your game?" "Oh, yes. She told me long ago." The old man hesitated, then went on, his lips twitching a little. "I was growling one day, 'cause I was so bent up and crooked. And when you s'pose the little thing said, well, I couldn't guess. I would think she could find anything but that to be glad about. Well, she did. She said I could be glad anyhow, that I didn't have to stoop so far to do my weeding, 'cause I was already bent part way over." Nancy gave a wistful laugh. "Well, I ain't surprised after all. It might be now she finds something. You've been playing it, that game, since almost the first, 'cause there wasn't no one else she could play with it. Though she did speak of her aunt, Miss Polly." Nancy chuckled. "I guess you hain't got such an awful different opinion on mysteries than I have." She bridled. Old Tom stiffened. "I was only thinking 'twould be some of a surprise to her," he explained with dignity. "Well, yes, I guess 'twould be then," retorted Nancy. "No, I ain't saying what 'twould be now. I believe anything, old mistress, now, even that she'd take to playing herself." "But ain't the little gal told her ever? She told everyone else, I guess. I'm hearing of everywhere now since she was hurted," said Tom.
Well, she didn't tell Miss Polly, rejoined Nancy. Miss Pollyanna told me long ago she couldn't tell her, 'cause her aunt didn't like to have her talk about her father, and 'twas her father's game, and she'd have to talk about it with him if she did tell it. So she never told her. Oh, I see. I see. The old man nodded his head slowly. They was always bitter against the minister chap. All of 'em, 'cause he took Miss Jenny away from 'em. And Miss Polly, young as she was, could never forgive 'em. She was that fond of Miss Jenny in them days. I see. 'Twas a bad mess, he sighed as he turned away. Yes, 'twas all round, sighed Nancy in her turn as she went back to her kitchen. For no one were those days of waiting easy. The nurse tried to look cheerful, but her eyes were troubled. The doctor was openly nervous and impatient. Miss Polly said little, but even the softening waves of hair about her face and becoming laces at her throat could not hide the fact that she was growing thin and pale. As to Pollyanna petted the dog, smoothed the cat's sleek head, admired the flowers, and ate the fruits and jellies that were sent in to her, and returned innumerable cheery answers to the many messages of love and inquiry that were brought to her bedside. But she, too, grew pale and thin, and the nervous activity of the poor little hands and arms only emphasized the pitiful motionlessness of the once active little feet and legs, now lying so woefully quiet under the blankets. As to the game, Pollyanna told Nancy these days how glad she was going to be when she could go to school again. Go to see Mrs. Snow, go to call on Mr. Pendleton, and go to ride with Dr. Chilton. Nor did she seem to realize that all this gladness was in the future, not the present. Nancy, however, did realize it and cry about it when she was alone. Chapter 26. A Door Ajar. Just a week from the time Dr. Mead, the specialist, was first expected, he came. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man with kind gray eyes and a cheerful smile. Pollyanna liked him at once and told him so. You look quite a lot like my doctor, you see, she added engagingly. Your doctor. Dr. Mead glanced in evident surprise at Dr. Warren, talking with the nurse a few feet away. Dr. Warren was a small, brown-eyed man with a pointed brown beard. Oh, that isn't my doctor, smiled Pollyanna, divining his thought. Dr. Warren is Aunt Polly's doctor. My doctor is Dr. Chilton. Oh, said Dr. Mead a little oddly, his eyes resting on Miss Polly, who, with a vivid blush, had turned hastily away. Yes, Pollyanna hesitated, then continued with her usual truthfulness. You see, I wanted Dr. Chilton all the time, but Aunt Polly wanted you. She said you knew more than Dr. Chilton anyway about broken legs like mine. And of course, if you do, I can be glad for that. Do you? A swift something crossed the doctor's face that Pollyanna could not quite translate. Only time can tell that, little girl, he said gently. Then he turned a grave face toward Dr. Warren, who had just come to the bedside. Everyone said afterward that it was the cat that did it. Certainly, if Fluffy had not poked an insistent paw and nose against Pollyanna's unlatched door, the door would not have swung noiselessly open upon its hinges until it stood perhaps a foot ajar. And if the door had not been open, Pollyanna would not have heard her aunt's words. In the hall, the two doctors, the nurse, and Miss Polly stood talking.
In Pollyanna's room, Fluffy had just jumped onto the bed with a little purring meow of joy. When through the open door sounded clearly and sharply Aunt Polly's agonized exclamation, "Not that! Doctor, not that! You don't mean the child will never walk again." It was all confusion then. First from the bedroom came Pollyanna's terrified, "Aunt Polly! Aunt Polly!" Then Miss Polly, seeing the open door and realizing that her words had been heard, gave a low little moan, and for the first time in her life, fainted dead away. The nurse, with a choking, "She heard," stumbled toward the open door. The two doctors stayed with Miss Polly. Dr. Mead had to stay. He had caught Miss Polly as she fell. Dr. Warren stood by, helplessly. It was not until Pollyanna cried out again, sharply, and the nurse closed the door, that the two men, with a despairing glance into each other's eyes, awoke to the immediate duty of bringing the woman in Dr. Mead's arms back to unhappy consciousness. In Pollyanna's room, the nurse had found a purring gray cat on the bed, vainly trying to attract the attention of a white-faced, wide-eyed little girl. Miss Hunt, please! I want her, Polly! I want her right away! Quick, please!" The nurse closed the door and came forward hurriedly. Her face was very pale. She can't come this just minute, dear. She will a little later. What is it? Can't I get it?" Pollyanna shook her head. "But I want to know what she said just now. Did you hear her? I want her, Polly. She said something. I want her to tell me it isn't true. 'Tisn't true." The nurse tried to speak, but no words came. Something in her face sent an added terror to Pollyanna's eyes. "Son, you did hear her. It is true." "Oh, it isn't true. You don't mean I can't ever walk again?" There, dear. Don't," choked the nurse. "Perhaps he didn't know. Perhaps he was mistaken. There's a lot of things that could happen, you know." But Polly said he did know. She said he knew more than anyone else about broken legs like mine." "Well, yes, I know, dear. But all doctors make mistakes sometimes. Just don't think about it anymore about it now. Please don't, dear." Pollyanna flung out her arms wildly. "But I can't help thinking about it," she sobbed. "It's all there is now to think about. Why, Miss Hunt, how am I going to go to school? Or see Mr. Pendleton or Mrs. Snow or anybody?" She caught her breath and sobbed wildly for a moment. Suddenly she stopped and looked up, a new terror in her eyes. "Oh, Miss Hunt, if I can't walk, how am I ever going to be glad for anything?" Miss Hunt did not know the game, but she did know that her patient must be quieted, and that at once. In spite of her own perturbation and heartache, her hands had not been idle, and she stood now at the bedside with the quieting powder ready. There, dear. Just take this," she soothed, "and by we'll be more rested, and we'll see what can be done then. Things aren't half as bad as they seem, dear, lots of times, you know." Obediently, Pollyanna took the medicine and sipped the water from the glass in Miss Hunt's hand. I know. Well, it sounds like things Father used to say," faltered Pollyanna, blinking up the tears. He said there was always something about everything about me worse. But I reckon he never just heard he could never walk again. I don't see how there can be anything about that could be worse. Do you?" Miss Hunt did not reply. She could not trust herself to speak just then. Chapter 27. 2 Visits. It was Nancy who was sent to tell Mr. John Pendleton of Dr. Mead's verdict. Miss Polly had remembered her promise to let him have direct information from the house. To go herself or to write a letter she felt to be almost equally out of the question. It occurred to her then to send Nancy. There had been a time when Nancy would have rejoiced greatly at this extraordinary opportunity to see something of the house of mystery and its master. But today, her heart was too heavy to rejoice at anything. She scarcely even looked about her at all, indeed, during the few minutes she waited for Mr. John Pendleton to appear. "I'm Nancy, sir," she said respectfully, in response to the surprising questions of his eyes when he came into the room. "Miss Harrington sent me to tell you about Miss Pollyanna." "Well?" In spite of the curt terseness of the word, Nancy quite understood the anxiety that lay behind that short "well." "It ain't well, Mr. Pendleton," she choked. "You don't mean—" He paused, and she bowed her head miserably. "Yes, sir. Well, he says she can't walk again. Never." For a moment there was absolute silence in the room. Then the man spoke, in a voice shaken with emotion. "Poor little girl. Poor little girl." Nancy glanced at him, but dropped her eyes at once. She had not supposed that sour, cross, stern Dr. John Pendleton could look like that. In a moment he spoke again, still in the low, unsteady voice. "It seems cruel never to dance in the sunshine again. My little prison girl." There was another silence. Then abruptly the man asked, "She herself doesn't know yet, of course, does she?" "But she does, sir," sobbed Nancy. "That's what makes it all the harder. She found out, drat that cat." "Beg your pardon," apologized the girl hurriedly. "It's only that the cat pushed open the door, and Miss Pollyanna overheard him talk, and she found out that way." "Poor little girl," sighed the man again. "Well, yes, sir. You'd say so, sir, if you could see her," choked Nancy. "I ain't seen her but twice since she knew about it, and it done me up both times. You see, it's all so fresh and new to her, and she keeps thinking all the time of new things she can't do now. It worries her, too, 'cause she can't seem to be glad." "Maybe you don't know about her game, though," broke off Nancy apologetically. "A glad game?" asked the man. "Oh, yes, she told me that." "Well, she did?" "Well, I guess she had told it generally to most folks, but you see now she can't play it herself, and it worries her. She says she can't think of a thing, not a thing about this not walking again to be glad about." "Well, why should she?" retorted the man, almost savagely. Nancy shifted her feet uneasily. "That's the way I felt, too, till I happened to think it would be easier if she could find something, you know. So I tried to remind her." "Remind her of what?" John Pendleton's voice was still angrily impatient. Of, of how she told the others to play it. Miss Snow and the rest, you know. And what she says for him to do. But the poor little lamb just cries, and it says it don't seem same somehow. She says it's easy to tell a lifelong invalid how to be glad, but it ain't the same thing when you're the lifelong invalid yourself and have to try to do it. She says she told herself over and over again how glad she is that other folks ain't like her, but all the time she's saying it, she ain't really thinking of anything, only how she can't ever walk again." Nancy paused, but the man did not speak. He sat with his hands over his eyes. "Well, then I try to remind her of how she used to say the game was all the master to play when it was hard, resumed Nancy in a dull voice. But she says that too is different, when it really is hard. And I must be going now, sir, she broke off abruptly. At the door she hesitated, turned, and asked timidly, I couldn't be telling Miss Pollyanna that you seen Jimmy Bean again, I suppose, sir? Couldn't I?
Oh, so yeah, you could. As I haven't seen him, observed the man a little shortly. What?
Nothing, sir. Only, well, you see, that's one of the things she was feeling bad about, that she couldn't take him to see you now. She said she'd taken him once, but she didn't think he showed off very well that day, and she was afraid he didn't think they would make a very nice child's presents after all. Well, maybe you know what she meant by that, but I didn't, sir.
Yes, I know what she means.
Oh, right, sir. It was only that, well, she was wanting to take him again, she said, so as to show her you can really be a lovely child's presents. And now she can't try out the head automobile. I begs your pardon, sir. Goodbye. And Nancy fled precipitously. It did not take long for the entire town of Beldingsville to learn that the great New York doctor had said Pollyanna Whittier would never walk again. And certainly never before had the town been so stirred. Everybody knew by sight now the piquant little freckled face that had always a smile of greeting, and almost everyone knew of the game that Pollyanna was playing. To think that now, never again would that smiling face be seen on their streets. Never again would that cheery little voice proclaim the gladness of some everyday experience. It seemed unbelievable, impossible, cruel. In kitchens and sitting rooms and over backyard fences, women talked about it and wept openly. On the street corners and in store lounging places, the men talked too and wept, though not so openly. And neither the talking nor the weeping grew less when, fast on the heels of the news itself, came Nancy's pitiful story that Pollyanna, face to face with what had come to her, was bemoaning most of all the fact that she could not play the game, that she could not now be glad over anything. It was then that the same thought must have, in some way, come to Polly's friends. At all events, almost at once, the mistress of the Harrington homestead, greatly to her surprise, began to receive calls. Calls from people she knew and people she did not know. Calls from men, women, and children, many of whom Miss Polly had not supposed that knew her niece knew at all. Some came in and sat down for a stiff 5 or 10 minutes. Some stood awkwardly on the porch steps, fumbling with hats or handbags, according to their sex. Some brought a book, a bunch of flowers, or a dainty to tempt the palate. Some cried frankly. Some turned their backs and blew their nose furiously, but all inquired very anxiously for the little injured girl. And all sent her some message. And it was these messages which, after a time, stirred Miss Polly to action. First came Mr. John Pendleton. He came without his crutches today. I don't need to tell you how shocked I am, he began almost harshly. But can nothing be done? Miss Polly gave a gesture of despair. Oh, we're doing, of course, all the time. Dr. Mead prescribed certain treatments and medicines that might help, and Dr. Warren is carrying them out to the letter, of course, but Dr. Mead held out almost no hope. John Pendleton rose abruptly, though he had but just come. His face was white and his mouth was set into stern lines.
Miss Polly, looking at him, knew very well why he felt he could not stay longer in her presence. At the door he turned. "I have a message for Pollyanna," he said. "Will you tell her, please, that I have seen Jimmy Bean, and that he's going to be my boy hereafter? Tell her I thought she would be glad to know. I shall adopt him, probably." For a brief moment, Miss Polly lost her usual well-bred self-control. "You will adopt Jimmy Bean?" she gasped. The man lifted his chin a little. "Yes. Well, I think Pollyanna will understand. You will tell her I thought she would be glad?" "Why, of course," faltered Miss Polly. "Thank you," bowed John Pendleton as he turned to go. In the middle of the floor, Miss Polly stood, silent and amazed, still looking after the man who had just left her. Even yet she could scarcely believe what her ears had heard. John Pendleton adopt Jimmy Bean? John Pendleton, wealthy, independent, morose, reputed to be miserly and supremely selfish, to adopt a little boy? And such a little boy. With a somewhat dazed face, Miss Polly went upstairs to Pollyanna's room. "Pollyanna, I have a message for you from Mr. John Pendleton. He has just been here. He says to tell you that he has taken Jimmy Bean for his little boy. He says he thought you'd be glad to know it." Pollyanna's wistful little face flamed into sudden joy. "Glad? Glad? Well, I reckon I am glad. Oh, Aunt Polly, I've so wanted to find a place for Jimmy, and this is such a lovely place. Besides, I'm so glad for Mr. Pendleton, too. You see, now you'll have the child's presents." "The what?" Pollyanna colored painfully. She had forgotten that she had never told her aunt of Mr. Pendleton's desire to adopt her, and certainly she would not wish to tell her now that she had ever thought of a minute for leaving her, this dear Aunt Polly. The child's presence," stammered Pollyanna hastily. "Mr. Pendleton told me once, you see, that only a woman's hand and heart or a child's presence could make a home. Well, now he's got it. The child's presence." "Oh, I see," said Miss Polly very gently, and she did see more than Pollyanna realized. She saw something of the pressure that was probably brought to bear on Pollyanna herself at the time John Pendleton was asking her to be the child's presence, which was to transform his great pile of gray stone into a home. "I see," she finished, her eyes stinging with sudden tears. Pollyanna, fearful that her aunt might ask further embarrassing questions, hastened to lead the conversation away from the Pendleton house and its master. "Dr. Chilton says so, too, that it takes a woman's hand and heart or a child's presence to make a home, too, you know," she remarked. Miss Polly turned with a start. "Dr. Chilton? How do you know that?" "Well, he told me so. 'Twas when he said he lived in just rooms, you know, not a home." Miss Polly did not answer. Her eyes were out the window. "So I asked him why he didn't get him, a woman's hand and heart, and have a home." "Pollyanna!" Miss Polly had turned sharply. Her cheeks showed a sudden color. "Well, I did. You look so sorrowful." "But what did he say?" Miss Polly asked the question as if in spite of some force within her that was urging her not to ask it. "Well, he didn't say anything for a minute. And he said very little. You can always get him for the asking." There was a brief silence. Miss Polly's eyes had turned again to the window. Her cheeks were still unnaturally pink. Pollyanna sighed. "He wants one anyhow, I know. He could have one." "But, Pollyanna, how do you know?" "Because afterwards, on another day, he said something else. He said that low, too, but I heard him. He said he'd give all the world if he did have one woman's hand and heart." "But, Polly, what's the matter?" And Polly had risen hurriedly and gone to the window. "Nothing, dear.
I was changing the position of this prism, said Aunt Polly, whose whole face now was aflame. That's all the time we have for tonight. Thank you so much for joining me. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the story or anything, really. Feel free to comment, like, and subscribe, and check out the links below. Have a wonderful night, and I'll see you in the next one.